Lake of Kalandra gave us the reveal of one of Path of Exile's most mysterious and iconic characters, Kalandra. This harpy, siren, Kurungai Tuku, is imprisoned in this lake, an ever-changing landscape that reflects encounters on Rayclast and gives us the power to reflect items. The reflected items are split into exact opposites of each other, which doesn't match the power of the fabled in-game currency, the Mirror of Kalandra. Why does the lake create opposite reflections? Why is Kalandra stuck here, and why have we come to her lake? And what triggers Kalandra's seemingly random turns to evil, where she threatens us and tries to keep us from leaving? First, let's go over the etchings that we can read throughout the lake. These are the most solid source of lore for Kalandra's backstory. According to these writings, Kalandra discovered the lake, fully formed, before the world around it had even solidified beyond primordial ooze and magma. Wherever she came from, this land around the lake was a lifeless realm, but somehow the lake existed. When she entered the lake, she was imprisoned within it. Upon realizing she was stuck, Kalandra made attempts to escape, but with every attempt she was always brought back, without any memories of her being outside. She also says if she goes fast enough, she could make her escape attempt last longer, up to several minutes, but she always ends up back at the lake with no memory of her time outside. She is unsure if she has ever actually left the lake, or the methods by which she is trapped within it, always returning. From her lake prison, she is able to observe Rayclast. She watches as Rayclast begins to develop life, and acknowledges that, as of yet, the beings are unable to understand their own existence. At this point, Rayclast is likely just animals, as she says, a vision of long ago, when you have an untainted paradise tile in your lake. She knows that once they are sentient, they will wonder why they are alive, and she will guide them, but spare them the pain of knowing the why of their existence. Apparently, she looks away from Rayclast for but a moment and they have invented religion. Kalandra seems to have disdain for divinity and godhood, saying, quite importantly, "What is a god but a thief of virtue?" And the prey are creating their own predators. As Rayclast and its people grow, some begin to find Kalandra's lake. These people are all in their time of greatest despair and need. Kalandra says she cannot help them, but gives them a new direction, but that they are ignorant to the cost they will pay. Are people paying a cost for visiting the lake, or receiving her new direction? What is most important here to me, and that ties into the previous etching, is her musing about her latest conversation. She says, "The problem is one of image, of a likeness cast by faith, of a reflection drawn by belief. What you need, my little thief, is a shattered mirror." I have ideas on who this thief could be, and what she means by a shattered mirror. Continuing the etching text, she mentions that she believed those visiting could eventually help her escape, and that a particular subset promised they would do whatever it took to free her, no matter how many generations. But once they learned the truth of this place, the lake, they burned themselves alive and moved to erase Kalandra from recorded history. We have seen the other side of this story through reliquary scarabs and the Order of the Jinn. Sumay was tasked with learning about the power of reflection, and was burdened by studying it. And after, the Order had all of the books and scribes assigned to that knowledge of Kalandra and the lake burned. Kalandra is infuriated by this, but she has a plan. The final etching tells us that Kalandra is now biding her time, with the knowledge that even though the methods of reaching her lake have been burned in an effort to keep people away, one person, us shining beacons of good judgment, of course, will find their way to her and set the proper events in motion for her escape. So, from the etchings alone, we know a few things about Kalandra. She found the lake before Rayclast had any humans or gods on it. She has been stuck alone ever since. She despises religion, but was happy to help people who found her lake, at least through her advice and new directions. She gave someone she endearingly called her little thief a shattered mirror to solve their problem, a problem of image, faith, and belief. She became hopeful that the Order of the Jinn would help free her, but instead they destroyed all the research they had gathered on her and her lake, further isolating Kalandra from Rayclast. And now she waits for us, as she believes we, dumb murder hobo that we are, will be her ticket out of the lake. I'll start by looking more closely at Kalandra. Is she a god? Well, no, she can't be a god, at least not like the gods we've seen on Rayclast. For one, she hates religion, and we know most gods, at least the ones with ascension stories, had to bolster faith, fear, or any form of reverence from followers to ascend on Rayclast. While some gods, Hinakora, Kitava, Solaris, and Lunaris, for example, don't have ascension stories, we still saw them as active beings on Rayclast proper. She has also been stuck on the lake since before humans even walked Rayclast lands. So then she's Eldritch, right? I don't think that's it either. Eldritch beings seem to have some link where they can hear, or at least sense each other's presence. The Elder came to Rayclast after traversing many worlds before, but other Eldritch beings did not come to the Elder's territory until he had fully disappeared, which they sensed as his great silence. Wouldn't the Elder be aware of Kalandra? Or the other Eldritch beings still sense her presence? Wouldn't she have some thoughts or discussions about matters of the cosmos? While I think Eldritch is more likely than God, Kalandra seems very tied to the physical realm of Rayclast. I think Kalandra is a being that is from somewhere else in the world, and found the lake while wandering our fairly new planet. Her form may be of an ancient kind we have never encountered, because they are not from Rayclast or may not exist anymore. While her actual origins can only be speculation, the established categories of God or Eldritch don't seem to fit her. Regardless of origin, she is stuck in the lake. The lake itself has some power or desire to hold her there. We know the lake has the power of reflection, but Kalandra says things like, "The lake does not like you," which could mean the lake has its own intentions and feelings. In terms of location, I believe the lake is actually a pocket or alternate dimension, outside of, but linked to, Rayclast. From the lake, Kalandra is only able to observe events that happen on Rayclast. She says of the Kalgur on expedition tiles that they are from beyond the sight of the lake, and thus a mystery to her. While she can only witness what happens on Rayclast, time on the lake seems to go much faster than time outside of it. In her etchings, she mentions that she looked away for but a moment and gods existed on Rayclast. While one could say that she just experiences time in a different way because of who or what she is, as she has asked us if we've ever contemplated eternity and said she has forever, I think time in the lake is different than time on Rayclast. Time is her oldest enemy. Maybe the time difference has made her escape more difficult. That could explain why the Order promised that generations would be dedicated to freeing her, until they changed their mind. She tells us that you step away, then step back, far older, which implies that for her only moments have passed, but for us, a larger amount of time has passed. She also seems able to see into the future when she says the wind spoke of your approach, or her awareness that someone will eventually come back to her lake to set her plans in motion. Time in the lake is condensed, although for her it is still an eternity. Even though the lake is only observing Rayclast, I don't think it is physically on Rayclast. It's more of a lens or plane that exists on top of Rayclast and observes it, outside of the time the mortal realm experiences below the lake. Then how does anyone ever find the lake? How did Kalandra, or any person thereafter, come to this alternate dimension? We know that in-game, we are given tablets to create our own adventure on the lake. From our perspective, the methods to get to the lake found us. We didn't find our way to the lake. And from Kalandra's etchings, it seems all people coming to the lake came in their time of greatest need. To some degree, I believe the lake finds people and offers them entry, either from Kalandra or the lake's will. But there has to be some element, some knowledge that allows people to more easily find entry to the lake. Otherwise, the Order of the Jinn would not have burned all of their books about it. Perhaps it requires both a desire to find and knowledge of the lake, or at least some yearning to get advice, be saved, whatever helps them in their time of need. It may work like two targets aligning, both parties searching for the other to allow this entrance to the lake to appear for them. That could explain why it did become harder for people to find Kalandra after the Order tried to erase her from recorded history, but not impossible. And that leads, of course, to the big question. What is it about the lake that was so horrible that the Order decided to not only burn all books about the lake in Kalandra, but also to burn all the scribes who had written the books? It is not only knowledge of Kalandra, but the truth of this place, this lake, that drove them to such extremes. And that is because the lake creates a reflection of anyone and anything that enters it. The lake not only creates a reflection, but an exact opposite reflection of that thing. We see this in the reflecting mists. These are not perfect replicas, but distortions, a negative to the original. And that goes for living things too. One reflection goes on, and one reflection must stay in the lake, just like the items we reflect. This explains Kalandra being split into two entities. At first, I assumed she just got angry at us as we got farther in the lake, that she had turned on us, perhaps as part of her plan to use us in her escape. But I think what we are actually seeing is her reflection. There are physical differences in the versions of Kalandra. The first Kalandra we see has white, blue eyes, white on her wings, and gold jewelry. I'll call this positive Kalandra. The second, hostile Kalandra, let's call her negative Kalandra, has red eyes, is all black, red jewelry, and a strange blue aura. And we do not see her turn into negative Kalandra. She appears to us as one or the other. I think these are two separate entities acting on their own terms. This inevitable opposite reflection could be the cost they will pay, Kalandra talks about, for people coming to visit her in the lake asking her for guidance. It would explain why the Order did not want anyone to find the lake. If it creates negative reflections and one version is trapped in the lake, any person finding Kalandra would create a reflection, and the kinder the person, the worse the reflection. What happens to these reflections is unclear. Which reflection gets to leave? Do they go out into the world of Rayclast? Do they always exist in the lake? I suspect that one exists in the lake and one in the world, always. If we consider Kalandra's escape attempts, her inability to recall what happens to her when she escapes, being able to make the transition take several minutes, perhaps what is really happening is that in those moments, she does truly leave the lake. Her negative reflection takes over until she is brought back by the lake as she is tied to it. Maybe someone has to be the caretaker of the lake at all times, and Kalandra, being the first to discover it, inadvertently took on that role. Now she might seek to replace herself and have someone else be the permanent guardian of the lake. And that would be us. A person powerful enough to replace her presence. Because I do think both versions of Kalandra are trying to escape. If they can never remember themselves leaving the lake, have they ever truly left? Negative Kalandra tells us neither of us will ever leave this place. She could mean herself and her reflection, but more likely she means herself and us, the exile. She has shaped this lake, this world, to further her own goals. perhaps luring us in with the promise of power, which is a ruse we have fallen for time and time again, and thus we are not unalike. But that is said to us by positive Kalandra. Kalandra's plan doesn't come to fruition, at least not this league. Maybe there was more planned content that didn't get finished, or maybe her story will continue in another expansion. Is there an opposite reflection of us created? Will we ever encounter our negative reflection, like a Dark Link boss fight? Is Kalandra going to escape, and if so, which version of her, or both? Which Kalandra is the original? Where does she come from, where will she go, and why is she a bird? Many questions remain. There are more theories and connections to discuss. From here on, we can only work with speculation, and I'll just be listing out theories about the lake and Kalandra without order. I suggest using the chapters on this video if you have specific theories you want answers to, because I will be jumping around a bit. First, I would like to reaffirm that yes, thank you, I was right about the heist replica researchers trying to replicate and utilize the power of Kalandra. Kalandra has 2 lines about heist, although the heist tiles may not have made it in-game. Kotra meddles with forces she does not understand and can never master, which gives us the interesting bit that Administrator Kotra, the head of Replica Research, is a woman. Kalandra also says fools seek to make the power of this lake their own. They will crack the world. That supports my theory that the replica researchers want the power to make perfect replicas, not of unique items, but of the contracted items they've procured. The alchemical chalice, the impossible crystal, and most alarmingly, the living ice. I recommend giving that video a watch if you haven't, linked in the description. Kotra and the researchers may even have knowledge of Kalandra's lake, as they say on Replica Nebulous that if only they had access to some mechanism like the font, they could achieve their goal. A font, in this case, is like a fountain, a source of some desirable substance like the Fountain of Youth or the Font of Wisdom. Is Kalandra the mother of 2, as in the mother of sin and innocence? Well, that theory was based on 2 points. 1, sin and innocence are brothers, probably twins, kind of like reflections. They're mirrored. And 2, Kalandra and the mother of 2 are both presumably powerful women who were shrouded in mystery. However, I think the reveal of Kalandra, the fact she has been stuck in the lake since Rayclass beginning, and especially that she hates gods, makes it seem to me that she is not the mother of 2. Unless Sin and Innocence were born to Kalandra and then raised by another woman out in Rayclass, the stories don't line up. I do think that the story of Sin and Innocence is Templar propaganda, so it should be read with a grain of salt, but there are no similarities in appearance. They look more like the Searing Exarch. Kalandra hates gods, and most importantly, I think that Sin and Kalandra met later, with no indication that they are related. And I'll talk about that at the end of the video. So, is the lake related to Tangmazu, the voice of Delirium? Or Yugul, the mirror monster? Or the giant cosmic mirror in Uhtred's arena? I'm pretty sure there is no connection to any of these. Kalandra refers to Tangmazu as the trickster who believes himself a master of mirrors, in a dismissive tone. And none of Tangmazu's dialogue discusses lakes or anything that would hint towards his mirror being the power of the lake or related to Kalandra. It's the same with Yugul, although we lack dialogue from or about him in comparison. As for Uhtred's tomb, Kalandra claims she has never seen or heard of the Kalgur before we introduce their reflections to the lake. However, the mirror wall of the tomb is on Rayclass, so it's not impossible. But the mirror seems to be connected to viewing the stars, reflecting the sky, and so there's no conclusion one way or another on this theory. Is Kalandra evil? She has a negative, perhaps evil, reflection, and both Kalandras want to escape the lake, which presumably means trapping us in it, which isn't very nice. But if anything is evil, I don't think it's Kalandra or even her reflection. The lake itself might be evil. It is the nature of the lake that scares the Order into burning their books and scribes. Quiet waters belie unseen danger, as Kalandra says. And Kalandra wasn't imprisoned for any misdeeds like Kitava or the Elder. Her imprisonment was happenstance. From what we can tell, just a consequence of her finding the lake first. She just wants freedom. If the lake wants anything, we can't be sure. Why do the Mirrors of Kalandra on Rayclast make perfect copies, but the lake makes exactly opposite reflections? Buckle in, because this one gets a little philosophical. The lake is connected to Rayclast. In the lake, things are reflected and become two exact opposite entities. If the lake is a reflection of Rayclast, a distorted reflection, but now that reflection of Rayclast is on Rayclast, reflecting that distorted reflection of Rayclast, it makes a perfect copy. It's like a double negative. Now, how the mirrors got onto Rayclast is a question I can't answer. It could be connected to how someone finds the entrance to the lake. It could be a byproduct of the lake's existence. Maybe when one version of her escapes, they actually do get to Rayclast, and somehow the mirrors are created through that, or placed there by her. It is quite strange that the Mirrors of Kalandra do the opposite of the Lake of Kalandra. But if you think of it as an opposite reflection of an opposite reflection, or maybe I'm thinking too hard. Not a theory, but just some interesting information. Kalandra confirms by name some visitors she's had to her lake, beyond the mention of Sume and the Order of the Jinn. These visitors include the Clay Shaper of the Primeval Vol, the Master Fisherman, who I assume is Krilson, and Einhar, the Beastmaster. Kalandra seems to dislike Einhar, calling him strange and that she used to love hunting, presumably before his arrival. I wonder if Einhar loves Kalandra. Another note I would like to add before my big theory is that even though Kalandra claims no knowledge of the Kalgur, specifically Medved and the Druids of the Broken Circle, have abilities that sound similar to, maybe even drawn from, the Lake of Kalandra. Gwynnon describes the Druids' practice of looking into scrying pools to see the future past. They would look into this water or liquid to see into the future by peering into the past, and believed that time is a circle. Kalandra is also able to see some degree of the future, since she knows we will arrive and says things like, "Where you are going depends on where you have been." The parallels between Kalandra's experience of time in the lake, where time goes much more quickly but also with much more fluidity, and the Druids' methods of reading the future by seeing the past and beliefs about time are obvious. But this actually ties into my final theory, because apparently the Druids' ability to use scrying pools to see the future was lost once the Kalgur and the Druids began using virtue gems on Rayclast. Somehow connecting to the corruption severed their ability to connect to the lake, or however they scryed. Finally, my big theory about Kalandra, and a connection I think she has to one of the most important aspects of Rayclast, the beast and corruption. In Kalandra's Etchings, she says, "What is a god but a thief of virtue?" And Sin, the person who planted the dark ember and created the beast that put all the gods to sleep, brought corruption and thaumaturgy to Rayclast, goes by the title Sin, Thief of Virtue. Could that be a coincidence? Maybe. But later, Kalandra writes about a conversation that gave her much to think about. Yet another person has entered her lake asking for advice, for help with a problem of image, of a likeness cast by faith, of a reflection drawn by belief. I interpret this as the issue being about the gods themselves. Gods on Rayclast ascend through rareness of quality and the adoration of their people. meaning the perception of one person by many people, be it adoration or fear, would transform a mortal into a god. Becoming a god is a likeness cast by faith. Kalandra continues, "What you need, my little thief, is a shattered mirror." In this context, her calling this being a thief is not a condemnation, but endearance, if anything. And if all gods are thieves of virtue, and sin specifically is the thief of virtue, I think her conversation was with sin. Kalandra believes gods using their followers' reverence to further their own power and ascend is stealing their virtue, their morally good quality, and I think Sin would agree. Perhaps he chose this title in honor of her beliefs and her guidance. I don't think the endearing tone when she calls him little thief means she's talking to her son, but rather that she likes the new direction she has given him to resolve his problem, and that her being given much to think about has excited her. Considering the lake's power of inverse reflection, taking one thing and creating its opposite, I believe that Kalandra is the one who instructed Sin on creating the beast. I'm not sure if Kalandra can actually give visitors gifts, as she says she cannot help them, but it's possible she gave Sin the Dark Ember, and either way, I believe she planted the seed, if you will, in Sin's head, that the beast could be the solution for his problems with gods on Rayclast. Sin tells us himself that he created the beast in response to the fighting between his ex-wife, Geruken, and their daughter, Shikari. Their fighting was so intense, Sin was worried all humanity would be destroyed by it. I created a beast that would free humanity from the tyranny of the gods. While this personal trouble was the most pressing issue, he tells us it was also to protect humanity as a whole from all gods. I wanted to give your kind a chance for peace, a chance to play atop the great stage, no longer pawns to a pantheon of petty, slavering gods. Kalandra, with her open distaste for gods and religion, would absolutely want to help Sin resolve his issues with the gods. But how is the beast this shattered mirror? Well, the beast works by absorbing all of the gods' divinity, incapacitating them, and producing the opposite of divinity, corruption. The beast takes divinity and reflects it to its perfect inverse. To be poetic, a mirror of Kalandra makes a perfect copy, but a shattered mirror, like the lake, creates a distortion. And if the issue is the image, that gods are created by the image people hold of them, to destroy that image, you must shatter the mirror that image is seen through. You break the image of divinity by replacing it with its opposite, the corruption. When we defeat Yugul, destroying a god which was Sin's intention with the beast, Sin says, "In death, the mirrors are thus shattered." This revelation of the origins of Sin's beast would also explain some of the inconsistencies that have always bothered me when Sin tells us about his beast. He claims that the beast had no ambition, that the cataclysm was all the fault and actions of mankind. In neglecting to provide it with ambition, I made it vulnerable to the ambitions of others. And that the beast was only ever defending itself. The fault lies within the twisted hearts of those who would betray their own humanity. But both Doriani and Malachi claimed that the beast called to them and gave them visions in the form of dreams. It called them to enter the beast and take over Nightmare, so that they might form the world from their own imagination. Malachi even describes the sensation of first interacting with a virtue gem as his skull aching as if its contents were growing, pressing against the bone, searching for a way to break free. There is similarity between the beast wanting to take over Rayclast and reshape it, and Kalandra wanting to escape the lake to reshape Rayclast. As you'll recall, she says to us, "You seek to shape the world to further your own goals. We are not unalike." If Sin was the sole creator of the beast, how could he not know of its powers, of its intentions? I always assumed he was lying to manipulate us, to make his own motivations align with ours as much as possible, and shift away from any blame for the cataclysm and its horrifying effects on the people and lands of Rayclast. It makes even more sense, however, if this was an unintended or unknown quality of the beast, a cost, perhaps, to Kalandra's assistance with Sin, resolving his issue with Geruken, Shikari, and all the gods. And if Kalandra's influence, her new direction for Sin, is tied to corruption, perhaps that is why, when the Druids of the Circle began utilizing the virtue gems, the essence of corruption, they can no longer use their scrying pools to see the future past. They have touched the shattered mirror. There are still some loose ends. Why is Kalandra a bird lady? And does that have any implications for her origins? Is it a reference for how we should interpret her character based on a mythical figure? How does a person actually access the lake? And where exactly is it? If Kalandra is neither god nor eldritch, what power does she hold? Or is it only the lake that has power? Does she have any hand in creation? Like when she alludes to understanding the why of existence, but will spare humanity the pain of knowing. Is the lake the only thing that can create reflections, or can Kalandra control or use that power? Did she have more purpose with suggesting Sin create the beast than just to put the gods to sleep? Will she ever escape? And if so, what will the consequences be? I have a feeling we will see more of Kalandra in the future. Hopefully the tepid reception of the League's mechanics won't hold back more interaction and lore with our most iconic bird friend. I would hate to have another synthesis on our hands where important, even crucial lore is lost due to mechanics not going core. I would love to know more about Kalandra as a person. As a bird, sorry. Her backstory, why she is a bird, what she really wants. Maybe then we could scry a bit more about her future by looking into her past. But for now, we will just have to reflect on what we've seen and hope the lake gets deeper with time. Thank you so much for watching. It's your boy Noodle. I want to give special thanks to my Twitch viewers, patrons, and Discord members for really helping me get my thoughts together for this video. You helped me turn it from a 3-minute Kalandra is a bird and she doesn't want to stay in the cage video to this giant theory drop you just watched. If you liked the video, consider joining my Patreon. For just $1 a month, you get your name slapped up on the end of videos like this. And as always, stay bird. I mean, stay sane, Exile.